Hello, welcome to Nello, a legal show that is here to make sure as Ugandans we know the law. My name is Tracy K. In today's episode, we're talking about contracts, the law that governs them, the Employment Act, and the roles and duties of employees. The Employment Act of 2006 was signed into law by the President of Uganda on the 24th of May 2006. It was put in place to make sure it governs the individual relationships on those contracts between employers and employees. It was also put in place to actually help those that seek redress in terms of wrongful termination or compensation in terms of the workplace. According to the Workforce Survey Report of 2017 to 2018, Uganda had about 11 million people as a workforce. Now, out of this, 19.3 million people made up what they call the workforce population. And out of these, 62 were in active employment. What is shocking about this is that 72% of this workforce population was male and 53% of this was female. In a shocking twist, out of the entire population, only 3% made up what we call employers. That is quite interesting. Furthermore, the report goes ahead to say 7 hours is what the average was for someone who's working a full-time job. In a shocking twist, 150,000 Uganda shillings is what this person got at the end of a whole month. Now ask yourself, does this make sense? We will be finding out what the streets have to say about this. But for now, do we understand the difference between an employer and an employee, or what a contract means? Now, a contract is a legal binding document that is signed in agreement between the employer and the employee. Now, you're probably wondering who an employer is and who an employee is. That's simple. An employee is someone that has willingly given up their time and agreed to work in exchange for a salary over a period of time. This is due with an opportunity that has been presented by an employer. An employer therefore goes ahead to be the person that has contracted the service from someone and is willing to pay a certain amount of fee if that work or service is done. Now, contracts are a very integral part of anyone's employment. We talked to a couple of youths around Kampala to find out what some of their challenges have been when it comes to employment and in particular contracts.
I'm Isiko Peter. I do have a contract, which now I've spent more than 3 years.
My name, I'm called Musa Mananila. No, I read it through the contract.
For a start, is for us, we keep looking for a job. Then when they call you for the interviews, after the interviews, when you receive appointment letter, that's when they tell you that you're going to sign a contract.
No, I read it through and I analyzed everything that was in the contract.
The truth is, according to me and all other people I know in contracts, there are very few who know where to go if at all there is anything which goes wrong with the contract.
I always go to the people who are head in the company, human resource.
So what you're going through really, it is not easily understood by people. Even when you explain, it takes long for them to understand what you really go through.
Automatically, it was favoring me. That is why I decided to sign it.
We look at these companies which give us contracts to be like the superior, where you can't say anything much.
Yes, I always get them, Chris. So I'm happy for that.
Very few people know that there is even a law which protects you when your contract is terminated wrongly, before even it ends.
Those laws you're talking about, I'm not conversant.
If there is someone maybe who can come and take you through what happens, for example, if there is anything which goes wrong with your contract and they happen to terminate it before the agreed time, that they have to pay you that time which they've not fulfilled. That one can help us very much, in that we can also have a stand, but we don't have. Me personally, I don't know. If they happen to terminate my contract, I'll go and look for another job. I don't know anything about that.
Now, it is only a narrow show if we have a legal expert to further help us break down what some of these are. And he's helping us find out what the contract for service is and what a contract of service is. He also further helps us understand what big words does attestation mean. The Contract Act of 2010, as well as the Employment Act of 2006. Stay with me and let's find out what Councillor Terry Kahumba has to say.
My name is Terry Kahuma. What is a contract? A contract is an agreement between two people. In the law, we have contract law, and then we have employment law. Now, both of these being contracts, they are governed by two different sides of the law. We have the Contract Act of 2010 and we have the Employment Act of 2006. Employment contracts, what an employment contract is an agreement between an employer and an employee. Now, the Employment Act of 2006 continues to break down who an employee is and who an employer is. In specific, Section 2 talks about who an employee is. So an employer is someone who could be a private person, a sole proprietorship, an entity, a government parastatal. In other words, an employer is someone who engages a person to do a service for them or to do a number of services for them in a specified period of time in exchange for wages or salary. So an employer is someone who I will engage you to give me a service. You're going to work for me for a period of 2 months or 3 months, and I'm going to be paying you a weekly or monthly salary. That is an employer under Section 2. An employee, on the other hand, is someone who engages with an employer for a specified period of time to provide services in exchange for wages or salary. So I'll give a holistic explanation. We have a contract of service like a verse and a contract for service. A contract of service is a contract in which the employer engages the employee to provide a group of services or technical skills and expertise in exchange for wages. So basically, a contract for service is the normal contracts or is the normal employment contracts that we have on a day-to-day basis. I could be employed by government and my employment contract says that Terry is supposed to work from 8 to 5 and we're going to be paying him 5 million shillings. What service is he offering? He's offering legal advisory services, he's drafting contracts, and he's partaking in any legal litigation that is going to take place. He's going to represent the company in court. So those are the services that Terry is exchanging for government, maybe Ministry of Justice or UETC or whatever it is. That's a contract of service because I'm providing a service. So I am your employee, you as Mandela Group of Companies or City Oil. However, contract for service, I am not directly working under you. I'm not your employee, but we're working together. If you've noticed, most times people are having events, let's say Mandela Group of Companies that owns City Oil is going to engage Kuku cleaning services or your Kuku to provide chicken for their event. Now, your Kuku, it doesn't mean that your Kuku is their employee. Your Kuku is just providing a service for them, so they're on the same level. That's a contract for service. Providing a service, but for a specified period of time. After the contract is done, you no longer have a contract. Attestation of contract, we need to understand what is an attestation or what is to attestate. To attestate, I'm going to give a very good example of Uganda. In Uganda, we live in a multilingual country. We have Lusoga, we have Luganda, we have Kinyarwanda, we have Runyoro. We are all not the same. English unifies us. However, not everyone understands English. What does that mean? If government wants to employ a person who is very good at delivering services, but only understands Lusoga, that means that the employer has to engage the person who comes from Busoga region who doesn't know English, and they'll provide them with an attestation document. If we have agreed to all the terms, of the contract of service, and he says, okay, he will still need an attestation document in which to interpret to him that, you know what, you are signing this document, this means this, you're going to be working for these hours, you're going to be working for this. So basically, attestation means that you are delivering the employment contract to him in a language which he or she understands. According to the Contracts Act of 2010, in specific section 10, a contract can either be oral or written. So we also have oral contracts. I could contract with you to be supplying me with milk every day, but we don't have a written document. But we've been doing business for 10, 20 years. But because of an oral contract and I've been paying you, you've been giving me the service. However, when it comes to employment contracts, as a legal person, I would not strongly advise oral contracts. Why? Because in case anything goes wrong, you need a written document in case you need to go to the labor court for labor disputes, or you need to engage in alternative dispute resolution issues. You see, not every contract is written the same. Sarah, who could be working at Ministry of Justice or Generation Company, will not have the same employment contract as another person. So the salaries differ, but however, what the Employment Act says is that you should pay someone salary or wages in accordance with their skills. It's not really set in stone that you should be paying a certain amount of wage, and our employment act does not specifically have a certain like bare minimum like other countries. Yes. And as you know, the law keeps developing with time, so I think with time they'll be including that. Yeah, because everyone has their different employment contracts and their different terms and conditions. Okay, we have what's called sick pay. So sick pay is stipulated under Section 55 of the Employment Act of Uganda 2006. Sick pay states that, especially for organizations or parastatals, every employee is entitled to sick pay. So once you are sick, it's always best to give notice to your employer that, you know what, I'm sick, I'm going to be off for this amount of time. Now, they give you an allowance of a month plus or 2 months, depending on your employer. But the Employment Act says a month plus. So you should be entitled to pay even when you're sick, because honestly, how are you going to cater for your medical bills? So the employer has to put that into consideration. So under Section 55, if someone is not paid, an employee is not paid, or a worker in a company, they can enforce Section 55 and say, you know what, I was not being paid when I was sick. However, the employer reserves a right at some point when you've been sick for too long and you're not performing your duties. Honestly speaking, the employer has a right to terminate you after some time, maybe 3 months and beyond. There, they may start looking for other options. When your employee dies, especially when there was some money that was supposed to be owed to them, there was some money that was supposed to be paid to them, let's say the month had ended and he had died, or maybe things like NSSA for any other money that was owed to that person, the money that was left to that employee goes to his family. According to the Employment Act, it's supposed to be 40 hours a week. So they put it in, they get an average. You know that the law is ever changing and it's not set in stone. So what they do is that they get an average. If let's say you work from 8 to 5, how many hours are those? That's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are 10 hours roughly. So 10 hours times maybe 5 days a week. There are many companies and many situations where people are able to engage with their employers and ask for extra pay. For example, the company I work for, you can work extra hours. Maybe let's say your work stops at 5. You can work until 9. Or you can even work on the weekends. So when you work over the weekends, you can be able to discuss with an employer that they give you more money. Or some people even substitute their leave days. For a whole month, I'm still going to be working. So they pay you almost double what you're supposed to get. Okay, so when it comes to termination of an employee, there are 2 types of termination. There's a procedural termination, then there's summary dismissal. I'm sure you've heard of summary dismissal. When it comes, I'll start with the quickest one, summary dismissal. That one does not need any trial or going to disciplinary committee or hearing the other side of the employee. Summary dismissal, if I get to hear that maybe you've robbed money or caused financial loss, I'm going to sack you. I'm going to dismiss you from my company without any trial. But when it comes to normal dismissal, they're going to first write warning letters to you. What happens is that the company will say, you know what, Sarah, you've not been working, or Terry, you've not been working. this is your first warning. You need to be coming on time, you need to work. If I don't listen to that warning, they send me another warning. So normally what most companies do, they send you 2 or 3 warnings. After that, they give you a notice, a hearing notice, that we are going to terminate you. And you set to appear in front of the disciplinary committee on such and such a day. So in that time, they are giving you time to prepare your defense. Maybe you're sick, maybe you've lost your child, or maybe something that is beyond your control is happening. So it gives you time to explain to human resource department of that particular company. So if you continue with your insubordination or any reason as to why they're warning you, then they take it for disciplinary committee. And if they find that you are indeed culpable of what they are accusing you of, then they terminate you, especially government offices or organizations. So it takes time. By the time they dismiss you from an office, they really wanted to. They had no choice. So the rights and duties are again stipulated under the Employment Act of 2006. Why I keep emphasizing that is for people to know their acts in the country. So rights and duties. All of us have right to seek pay, like you've talked about. Most employees have a right to seek pay, have a right to leave. You have a right to a fair hearing. Right to a fair hearing, let me just go into detail about that. Right to a fair hearing comes in accordance with Article 28 of the Constitution. In law, or us as lay people, us as legal people, we have what are called principles of natural justice. Now, natural justice is that every human being should have a right to a fair hearing. That means that it should enter into other sections of the law, especially employment, because you're dealing with people. If you're accusing Terry of not performing his duties, give Terry a chance to speak. Because even our very constitution, which is the mother law of the land, talks about that. So under Article 28, we have a right to fair hearing. Even when it comes to employment contracts, we have a fair hearing. So those are one of the rights. If anyone is dismissed unlawfully, they have a right to take these people to court. I'll give an example briefly. The company I work for had our company secretary dismissed summarily. It was just summary dismissal, like I had explained. No question, no what. She's still dragging us to court, and she's going to win a lot of money because of it. They didn't follow procedure, they did not warn her, they just told her the next day you're fired. It is a government company. You also have a right to work within your specified work hours. And actually that right is shared with your duty. It's also a duty for you to work. If they are paying you, you need to work. You need to appear. Yes. So those are just the basics I want to give. Your duties, you have a duty to work, duty to report to your station of work, duty to hand in assignments. Because if you ever take your employer to court, they're going to say, man, this guy wasn't working, so we had to sack him. Whichever job you're in, whether you like it or not, this is what puts food on your table. Also, just be disciplined at work, don't cause any trouble. If you ever fall into any trouble, feel free to always know your rights. And also educate yourself about the different legal issues that we have in our country.
It is very important that the next time you look at a contract, you look between the lines. Make sure you understand and take your time to read exactly what is noted down. You could also enlist the services of a lawyer to help you understand those big words in that contract. Now, that is important before you put pen to paper next time. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode and we look forward to the next one. Thank you for keeping it here with us. Nalo, know the law.